coordinated with our staff and our impact person.
Good evening. I want to welcome you to the Emergency Service Council meeting of September 21st, 2017. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mayor Medina.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't think we've ever done the pledge.
I know. May I have a roll call, please?
Belmont.
Present.
Brisbane. Burlingame.
Emily Beach, City of Burlingame, present.
Colma. Daly City. East Palo Alto. Foster City. Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough. Menlo Park. Millbrae.
Ann Schneider, Millbrae.
Pacifica.
Sue Degree.
Portola Valley. Redwood City. San Bruno.
Rico Medina.
San Carlos. San Mateo. South San Francisco. Woodside. County of San Mateo.
Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
No.
We do not. Thank you, Madam Clerk. That moves us on to, well, let me first recognize Captain Zamora. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your service to OES. It's really been, on a staff level, tremendous to work with your staff. You've always been readily available, and we're delighted to have you here. So thank you. That moves us to the approval of minutes from June 15th, 2017. Can I get a motion? We don't have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't have a quorum. We have 10?
Traffic was bad.
We have 11. Okay, so let's hold off on the approval of minutes for now, and then let's move on to item 3, which is the operational area report, attachment A, William Fogarty, Lieutenant Fogarty.
Thank you. As you can see in attachment A, and I believe all of you have. Thank you. So as you see, there's a listing of the fires that we've had occur, the illegal dumping, and I know that our hazardous material team is here to go ahead and speak about this further when it gets to be them. In addition to that, you see the SMC alerts, which Jeff Norris will be speaking about, and you will see also listed here the other events, including things that we have already in progress, like training and planning, which again you'll hear about from OES Supervisor Stephanie Murdy. Finally, I think you will see there that there is, for exercises, there are several that were listed, and we're going to have Brad Hartzell who will be talking about those as well. That concludes my part of it, and I'm going to turn it over at this point for the next topic.
There's a question from Ms. Degree.
19. It's like, what do we need to worry about? Is that a lot of bomb squad mutual aid type of thing?
No, I think what's important for bomb squad is a bomb squad will get a call if there's something like a firework. A firework is considered a felony,
okay.
but it also qualifies as a bomb call out. So there are those incidents that ended up happening, especially as you can see during this quarter, because it's July, August, and September.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
I know we talked before the meeting, but lightning strikes, cooling centers, they may be not significant because they didn't turn into anything, but are we going to begin to monitor those with climate change and more severe weather changes? Are we going to see some of that show up in the quarterly reports?
Absolutely, and actually, I think the chair has spoken to me about we'll be talking about responding to events, and that will be the topic that we have, where I'll be talking about that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So that moves us on to Skylon Radio Tower Construction Update. Mr. Torres.
Chairperson and members of council. Here we go. We're sliding over. So this is the update of the Skyline radio site. This here shows the coverage that the County of San Mateo provides, the total radio coverage. This is what Skyline itself, the radio site, provides as coverage. The adjoining sites of Pice Mountain, that coverage also bleeds into some of the coverage that was for the Skyline, as well as Half Moon Bay. The activities past, present, and future. PG&E provided permanent power to the Skyline site Monday of this week. They also installed meters to the switchgear on Monday, which provided permanent power to the new county site. Currently, the site itself is running on temporary power, and what that means, we have commercial power to it with temporary cabling. The new shelter commissioning is underway. Transfer of the racks from the old shelter to the new will take place next Tuesday and Wednesday. Activation of the new site is currently scheduled for next Wednesday. Demolition of the old site will happen sometime in October. The site relocation, that happens next week. Believe it or not, we are getting very close. So next Tuesday and Thursday, our radio shop with the County San Mateo's radio shop will be relocating the radio tower from where it's at now on Skyline Cemetery to its new location on Skyline Cemetery. During this period, radio coverage west of Skyline Boulevard will be impacted. Our radio shop, the County San Mateo radio shop, will be staging a mobile repeater to fill in that coverage that is impacted, but only portable radios will benefit from the mobile repeater, as mobile units are not currently programmed to communicate with that mobile repeater. So by the way, the content that I'm showing here was actually sent out in an email to the stakeholders earlier this week, Monday, by Mr. Chris Flatmo to all the stakeholders, PSC, the Sheriff Office, DPW, and of course our radio shop. So they've been notified that when they're operating west of Skyline Boulevard, they need to turn the portable radio to use channel 16. So we're just advising that they'll have a portable unit in there. They'll have their mobile unit. The mobile unit will be set to its normal Pat Pry 2, and the portable will be set to channel 16. They'll hear the thing. They'll hear the mobile give them a notification that it's no longer in signal, and then they can start using the portable. If there's any, then they've been advised if there's any issues during this period of time to please contact County San Mateo's radio shop, and that's the number. That's a look at the mobile repeater. That's a look at where the location of it will be to deal with the impacted area. So everybody wanted to know about a drone that we were taking some videos of. So this is about a 2-minute. We can cut it short at any time, but if you wouldn't mind starting it, sir. There you go. Still Phil? This is Phil Sewald. He's been the project manager on the Skyline project.
Okay, what you're looking at, the first is called a monopine, which will be having branches put on it as soon as we get past that. The other pole,
Excuse me, sir. Can you speak louder?
Oh, I'm
Can't
sorry.
hear you.
The first monopine is the County of San Mateo's. The second one is Horizons. Our shelter is right below, off to the left of the monopine. As you can see, they're coming around. That is the old site there, which will be decommissioned. Starting 10/2, we'll start demolition. So that's about it.
Yeah, essentially just wanted to show that the move, though not that far away, it's still very impactful. It took quite a bit of time to get another modular base put up, of course the pole put up, and as he mentioned, the actual pieces that make it look like a pine, we have to wait till after we get the microwave up there and adjust it. So we're coming close to the end here. So, and we can cut it at any time, but it should be ending pretty soon. What I think is kind of funny is the person to the left on the bottom there by the truck is actually the person flying it. He's licensed. He's picked up his FAA license to be able to do this, and he has actually a landing pad down there on the ground, and he's going to attempt to bring it onto the pad. But I'll have another slide, but just as a forewarning to the slide that's coming, we are actually going to have a demonstration of the drone and a site visit that will be open. We're inviting all you folks. It'll be the 28th, next Thursday, from noon to 2. I have a slide to show that, and you're certainly welcome. I'll have my email, Tony Uson's email, and Bill Dunbar's email. All we're asking is if you just let us know so we can make sure we're prepped. Our CIO, John Walton, is going to provide pizza for folks when they come out there. So It's ending right now. In fact, you can go ahead and cut it, sir. That way we don't. We pretty much run its course here. You're only going to say. All right, thank you. So here, and that's what I'm talking about. The Skyline radio site visit and drone demo Thursday. Next Thursday, September 28th from noon to 2. You'll tour the new site. You'll see this demonstration in person, and we'll get a chance to kind of see it up close and personal, what's actually happening. And at that point, it should be a production system as well. Any questions,
Are there any questions for Mr. Torres? Yes, Ms. Hurt.
ma'am?
In the end. Do you have any numbers, or were there any cost overruns since the last time we discussed the project?
No cost overrun. No cost overrun since the last time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Torres. That moves us on to item 2, SMC alert. Mr. Norris.
Good evening, Chairperson Canepa and members of the council. The SMC alert continues to be our main tool for notifying the community when there's any type of an emergency or circumstances where it could impact the way we live in this county. It also remains our main tool for notifying public safety agencies, specifically our first responders, our fire, law, public works people, when we're trying to call back crews when we need them. So a little bit of where we're at right now. We are at over 62,000 subscribers, and that is up about 5,000 since we were last meeting here in June. Our quick sign up, which is where all you have to do is text your zip code to 888-777. We're up over 11,100. We've gained about 800 additional subscribers that way as well. So the system continues to grow very well during these times. Since we last met, we've been charting and keeping careful track of the alerts that go out, and the numbers have been fairly consistent. We do see a slight increase, and a lot of that increase had to do with traffic-related issues and with other agencies starting to use the system more and more. So since we last met, 141 alerts have been put out on the SMC alert system. Now, not everybody receives all of those. You may be in the north part of the county and only receive some, south part of the county. Notably, it was used by Woodside Fire Protection District recently to give updates on the fire that was up at the Skeggs Fire, which was just south of Huddard Park. And though it went to 50 acres, didn't threaten any homes and didn't cause any evacuations. So Woodside Fire was definitely making sure people were aware that the community was safe. So we started looking at how we continue to grow the system, and we started to do a distribution saying how many people are subscribed from different cities, and we compared that against the population of the city to kind of come up with a percentage base. And now we're going to be doing a little more work based on this. We're going to be using this to target communities that we think we can get more people signed up on the system. So we're going to be working to reach out to those communities where we're not having as many subscribers. And I really have to thank Supervisor Canepa for starting up the idea of an SMC Alert Day recognized by the councils. In July, Half Moon Bay and the county both proclaimed a SMC Alert Day. It was followed, and just recently, on the same night, in fact, both San Bruno and Menlo Park, just earlier this month. Now, down near the bottom, we have San Carlos and Millbrae. They have their SMC Alert Day already scheduled, but the council meeting where they'll be acknowledged hasn't come up yet. So that's what we have on the update for the SMC Alert. If there are any questions, I'd be happy.
Schneider.
The previous slide where you've got us all listed, I always love to use a little bit of peer pressure. Was this sent to us, or can you send it? Can you send it to us? It's the
Yes.
subscriber
Oh, yes, yes.
distribution.
Yes, we
on that.
absolutely can send that to you.
And do you have it by computer versus phone, that kind of information?
No, the way these things were pulled from the system, we looked at the database and we looked specifically at only those records that had given us an address, and then we sorted them by the city that they had given us.
Thank you.
Are there any other? Well, thank you very much. Oh,
Are there any more questions? Seeing no questions, thank you so much, Mr. Norris.
thank you.
That brings us to item 3, the Hazard Mitigation Maintenance Plan. Mr. Spencer.
Good evening. As you may remember, 29 jurisdictions participated in the countywide hazard mitigation plan, which was formally adopted about a year ago. We just completed our first year of maintenance, and I'm pleased to inform that all participating agencies have completed their reporting process. This is important when applying for grant dollars or reimbursement funds and staying FEMA compliant. It is said that mitigation saves about $5 for every dollar spent. Initially, that may not seem like a lot, but if you have a $20,000 project, you could be saving around $100,000. Beyond that, hazard mitigation is important because it identifies action items for each jurisdiction meant to lessen the impact against specific natural hazards. FEMA recognizes that mitigation is one of their key elements in disaster preparedness. This tool is more than a checkbox for each year. It is meant to provide agencies with a prioritized project list aimed at reducing the impact from identified hazards. All of us have seen how devastating the recent hurricanes have been in Texas, Florida, and the Caribbean. Earthquakes are our #1 hazard, and each year we have our share of floods, slides, down trees, and more. It behooves us to use this mitigation tool, explore grant mitigation opportunities, and better prepare our communities. That's my update.
Thank you so much, Mr. Spencer. Through the clerk, I believe we have a quorum, is that correct?
It is correct.
Correct. And I think we have Councilwoman Chuang, Councilwoman Pappen, and Councilman Otaki, correct?
Correct.
Correct. What I'd like to do is I'd like to move to item 2 to approve the minutes from the June 15th, 2017. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you so much. That brings us to.
Chair, through the chair?
Yep.
I'm sorry, do have a question for Mr. Spencer.
Sure,
Would
you
that
do?
be
Okay. Mr. Spencer, would you mind coming back? Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt the flow.
No problem.
I'm curious about these yearly sort of updates, making sure all our communities are sort of working off the to-do list.
Right.
What's the standard? Is there something that we're held to that you have to check off, 10% of your to-dos, or can you just tell us a little bit more about the expectations
Sure,
on
I'd be
an
happy
annual
to.
basis, or is it just make some progress?
No, so when we put the plan together last year, each jurisdiction was asked to identify specific projects that would be unique to it. And then they also prioritized those. They also identified what ways that they might be able to fund that project. They were also, a third item was to give it a priority, high, medium, or low. And so you take the combination of the funding, the priority, and you put all those together, and you need to show you need to comment on that project status each year. So you may say, we're not doing anything because of staff restrictions, we're not doing anything because of lack of funding for this. What FEMA wants to see is some kind of report on the status of that project. You have about 5 years to do some kind of work on those projects. If a project is not going to be worked on, then it can be taken off the table and it's just deleted from the list. But what FEMA comes in and looks at is to say, okay, you've identified these as action items pertaining to specific hazards, and you were trying to mitigate some of those hazards. And so what they may do, if they're doing any kind of analysis or any kind of audit, they may say, okay, you haven't done anything related to that. That may affect the dollars. I'm not saying it will or won't, but I'm saying that, that's up to FEMA to decide.
Okay, so the only really then it's sort of every 5 years is when it would probably come to the city councils for sort of updating and approval, but it's sort of a staff update on a
Correct.
yearly basis. It
So
might be
the plan is approved. It's a 5-year plan. And FEMA prefers a multi-jurisdiction, which is why we did 29 agencies last year. So,
great. Thank you for that insight.
absolutely.
How does it work when it's a couple of jurisdictions, their actions that could affect another jurisdiction? So, for example, I have a neighborhood that flooded last year, and it's downhill from San Bruno and Millbrae. So, how do we work together, or how do you coordinate that, or do we coordinate it by ourselves? How does that get reported?
So in your annex, whoever provided input for that should have identified some action items that would be related to those. If there's nothing there, then they can be added to it. But I think that your point is well taken, is that there's a cooperation that can occur between between jurisdictions that neighbor each other. And so you can work together collaboratively on those issues.
Which I love. The question is, how do you make it happen? And in this particular circumstance, it also involves Samtrans, Caltrans, BART, High Speed Rail, and the airport, and SFPUC. So some of these, it might be nice if we had another method that could help be a point to keep everybody moving forward.
Okay, so probably what would be good is to have your emergency coordinator, who I know is, sit down, and I can help provide some kind of facilitation there, and then also for him to speak with the emergency coordinator in San Bruno and try to create a collaborative process of talking and seeing what efforts can be put into
Great.
that.
And then eventually let the poor lowly elected official know.
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely.
We've actually had a couple of really good meetings with a number of the jurisdictions, including the airport. But it's an interesting set of problems because there's so many owners.
Right, and I think your point is well taken in the sense that when we do have disasters or issues, they're not bound by political boundaries. They overrun a lot of different ones. So your concept of the fact that it's not going to stop at a city line and it involves multi-jurisdictions is well taken.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Wiest.
On that topic, San Mateo County is doing the first one right now with multi-jurisdictions, just for your information, because I actually got read in on it last night. So there is a format that's already in existence. San Mateo County's got the lead role in it, and it's San Mateo, Redwood City, Atherton, and Menlo Park, and Woodside, but Woodside opt out. So it's tricky, but it exists. So through your people, there's a guide.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is that also a flooding issue? Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So we're on to new business, and it's Exercises Unified Command. Mr. Hartzell.
Try new technology instead of paper notes, so we'll see how that goes. My name is Brad Hartzell. I'm a Battalion Chief of the North County Fire Authority, serving the communities of Brisbane, Daly City, and Pacifica, and currently assigned to OES as a fire liaison. One of the many things that I do is in the fire liaison position that contributes to the mission of OES is develop training and exercises for unified command, interoperability between law, fire, EMS, and other responding agencies. For approximately the last 7 months, we've been planning for 3 exercises that we had this last quarter. And the goals of these exercises included unified command, interoperability, communications, logistics, planning, and operational components. The first exercise was held on Saturday, August 12th, starting at midnight until 0500 in Huddard Park and the Flager Estate. And this was a search and rescue exercise that involved looking for several hikers that separated during a hike earlier in the day. There were several groups involved in the exercise. Most of these groups normally did not work together. Okay, so when you had all these people, they normally had their assignments, they did their own thing, or their own events that they were on. So everybody played together on this particular exercise for the first time. That included San Mateo Parks, National Parks, Mid-Peninsula, County Fire, which is CAL FIRE, Woodside Fire Protection District, San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, Barry, a Mountain Search and Rescue, another Sheriff's Office group, Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue, Sheriff's Deputies, Sheriff's Law Liaisons, Sheriff's Communications Unit, Deputy Recruits, and Area CERT members. And one thing you're going to note is that when I go through this, I'm going to list off a bunch of agencies, and then I'm going to comment on the importance of how that made everything so successful. Okay, so the second exercise was later that morning, starting at 0600 hours and ending at 1000. And many of the same players in the first group participated again, so this was a very long night for all of us. And the second group had a large animal evacuation group, coastside emergency corps, mounted search and rescue. And the lessons learned from these exercises could have been utilized at the Skaggs fire recently, since it was near the Huddard Park and the Flager Estate. Fortunately, the fire was kept small, and we didn't have to do this. But it's amazing sometimes that you look at an area, you look at a building, and you go, hey, this could be a bad thing. And later that day, later that week, you're there. So that's carried through on this. The third exercise, which was my second time with this, was Train on the Train 3, and this was held in Menlo Park on August 24th. This was an exercise to practice the county chief's law and fire, violent intruder criminal mass casualty policy, which is in development at this time. It's still in committee. And the participating agencies included Caltran, Sheriff's Office Transit Unit, various CERT members. Millbrae CERT provided the moulage, so they painted everybody up to show all the injuries or potential injuries that could have been there. They did a really nice job. The fire agencies included Menlo Park, Redwood City, Woodside, San Mateo, and Mountain View from Santa Clara County. On the law side was Menlo Park PD, Atherton, San Mateo City, San Bruno, the Sheriff's Office, Belmont PD, Redwood City PD, and Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety from Santa Clara County. And AMR participated as well. And that because we had Santa Clara agencies, both law and fire, involved in this, there was discussions with those groups to increase the training between San Mateo and Santa Clara County Fire. Because the border, if anything happens on the border, there are basically border drops when any of these incidents happen. Everybody's come into play, so we want to expand that sort of training and exercise. So all the exercises were conducted by on-duty personnel and volunteers, reducing the overall cost of all these exercises. So when I'm getting back to the large number of participating agencies, what happens a lot of times in exercises and drills, because we don't have all the players in place, these exercises can only go to a certain point. Because we had so many law, fire, EMS agencies, volunteers, we were able to actually take all of these exercises to their conclusion. And that is a rare occurrence. I've been doing this for a really long time, and to have that opportunity was pretty awesome. So the training and relationships that were built from that was pretty extensive. One of the other things, I think it's really important to recognize the volunteers that came in as role players, provided additional insight because they're observing all the efforts and work that we're doing and be able to comment on that and add to our training and add to our experience. So here we go. So they were an integral part of the exercise. Recently, throughout the Bay Area, we had the Urban Shield exercise, and part of that was a Green Command segment, which involved the CERT teams in San Mateo County. And there were several rewards for our local CERT teams, which included Belmont, Millbrae, Pacifica, and South San Francisco. So they were recognized for their efforts throughout this event.
Mr. Hartzell, who were they recognized by? That's important. Were they recognized by Alameda County?
They were. I believe it was the Alameda Sheriff's Office because they were running the exercise, the Urban Shield exercise. So I believe it was whoever the Urban Shield group. Somebody that might know better might be able to comment on that. But I believe that's where it came from.
Because that's a pretty. Sorry to interrupt. That's a pretty strong recognition, right? Because there's a lot of different counties that participate in this, and you said the following cities were Belmont.
We're Belmont, Millbrae, Pacifica, and South San Francisco.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Thanks.
It was good stuff. So we have some upcoming exercises, which include the Great Shakeout, a federal government terrorism exercise, and the COOP exercise. And I'd like to thank you for your time, and if you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any? Mr. Sylvester.
Kudos to you, sir. Apparently, having previous experience in dealing with public safety, I know how difficult it is to get the collaboration between fire, police, EMS, and especially to talk with each other and to understand each other, because I assume you use codes in some of your exercises, and to have so many come on board to include some volunteers, that's a tough job. So I'd like to say again, kudos to you and thank you for that report.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Ms. Degree?
You mentioned, I didn't catch the third exercise that's coming. You said after,
Oh, the coop?
the what?
The coop?
Coop?
So somebody explain to me what coop is?
Sounds like a
but there was
cough.
also the coop.
Chickens? Something to do with chickens?
Continuation of operations. It's a county thing. It went over my head. I apologize.
Or maybe it has something to do with chickens.
No.
That's what we get for making, you can.
Ms. Chuang?
Thank you, through the chair. Questions, could you elaborate a little bit about the shakeout? Because I know that it's been publicized quite a bit and over the county. And then there's various organizations are encouraged to participate and enroll in that. So what, in your capacity, what is the, what's the scope of it?
I'm going to have to pass that on to somebody who knows a little bit more on that than I do. Oops.
So the Great Shakeout is going to be an exercise at obviously is the entire state of California. So the Great Shakeout is something that happens on an annual basis. It's always October 19th. And what we do is we try to encourage everyone to go ahead and participate in it. What usually ends up happening is there's an evacuation drill with hopefully a rallying location where people then check in and let us know that they're okay. And also can tell us from the San Mateo County perspective where they need help or where they don't need help. And so this exercise, what we've done is try to get all of our partners to get involved in addition to having operations here at the county. At the county level, we'll be evacuating all the buildings that are here, staging them at different times, and also opening up our emergency operations center if needed as well.
So if the cities want to participate, do you have a kind of a template for them to take that and run with it?
Absolutely. So we have an exercise plan that we can definitely provide to them and working with them.
Great, thank you.
Great. Are there any additional questions? Ms. Schneider?
You might have just answered it. I blanked out. Do you have talking points for us so that we can announce it at our council meetings?
Absolutely.
I think somehow Millbrae, we didn't participate last year, and I want to make sure that we do. I think our schools did, but the city didn't.
I'll be more than happy to give it to your emergency manager and also give you a copy as well.
Great, thank you. Or maybe to all of us, so.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Snyder. That moves us on to item 2, which is the OAS calendar, and it's Stephanie Murty.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be briefly giving an update about the OAS calendar. So as you know, from the last time that we talked about this is our multi-year OAS schedule, which includes numerous different content of OAS exercises, special events that we have, obviously Halloween, Pumpkin Festival, DOC and EOC trainings, and then also emergency plan updates and the different topics of the month that we have. September is National Preparedness Month, and we also have fire safety, flood, earthquake, etc. as the year goes on. Right now, I'd like to focus a little bit on training, as that's been coming up most recently. So the RSVPs that we just had for September 19th, we actually had a Web EOC class, and Web EOC is a 2-hour class, which is basically the operation of Web EOC. It's a crisis management software that emergency managers use, as well as here at OES, we utilize this program to share information. So we've actually scheduled these dates from September going all the way through April of 2018, and we have different locations throughout the county, so it's not just here at our campus, but it's also north and central and south locations. From the RSVPs for September 19th, we had 58% for jurisdictional participation. We had 10% of private organizations, 16% for nonprofit, and 16% for county participation. A trend that's been happening with a lot of our trainings lately is that it's usually over 50% is jurisdictional participation, and typically it is under 25% for just county employees, to make sure that everyone is being able to participate. It doesn't really matter what organization you come from. So our upcoming class, if this would work, is ICS 300, which is the intermediate ICS for expanding incidents. So for the October date, it is October 4th and 5th. It is a 2-day class from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's taking place in Belmont EOC, and as of today, we have 41 participants registered for this class, which is a very high number, something that is really difficult when it comes to trainings. It's really difficult to get people in, so we're making sure that we're providing training on a regular basis. As you'll see on this pie chart is, again, jurisdictional participation is over 50% with 61%. County is at 19%, private is 10, and nonprofit is also 10. So we also have another class coming up. I believe it's in January. It is ICS 400. So obviously, after you take ICS 300, you then have the prerequisite to go ahead and do 400. So we're on our calendar, we're going to make sure that we're having training on a consistent basis, making sure that there's a follow-up to classes, not just that you're taking the prerequisites and then the next one's not offered. So the next thing that I like to also point out is that on our calendar, we also added the Emergency Services Council meetings to know when the next meetings are, and it is on our Sheriff's Office OES calendar, and the dates are provided there. So at this point, it was just a really brief update because, of course, trainings are going to keep going and going and going, and we'll provide updates as we have classes. But at this time, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions for Ms. Murdy?
Yes.
Ms. Chwang?
Yes.
Are these for the staff or for whoever takes them? Do you keep track of them at the county offering courses? And does the participant also get credential or credits for taking those courses?
So to answer your first question, which I believe was, who is this for? This is for anyone. So ICS classes are open to anyone. It's not limited to emergency services staff. So as you notice, there is nonprofit organizations such as Red Cross wants to take them. Private citizens can take them because we have volunteers also. So it's really open to anyone. As far as enrollment, we do make sure that we have a roster. So even if they're not able to sign up through our LMS system, our learning management system with the county, if they end up showing up that day because they were referred to by an emergency manager or something like that, we do have a roster in which we keep. As far as credentialing, it really depends on the individual because you don't know whether or not they're going to be credentialed, but if it is an ICS program, there is a certificate of completion. And so they will receive that. And if they are pursuing credential or a certificate of some sort, they can use that to obviously go through that process. No problem.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Murdy. Okay. That moves us on to item 3, hazardous material response. Mr. Thrasher.
Mr. Chair and Council, thanks again for the opportunity to be in front of you. I'm Kent Thrasher. I'm Battalion Chief with Belmont Fire Protection District, working with San Mateo and Foster City. And in my position with Belmont, I oversee and manage the hazardous materials response team that provides hazmat response for the county. So I'm here this evening to provide a brief overview and an update on our county hazardous materials team. As most of you know, we operate under a contract agreement through OES and through this council to provide emergency hazmat response or hazardous materials response to the entire county. Our response plan includes county environmental health to provide technical reference, analysis, and chemical samples, and to provide specific site information as they do the pre-planning on a lot of these sites that have hazardous materials there. In addition, we include members from OES on all responses to assist required documentation and, more importantly, to provide us additional resources as needed. They're a huge part of what we do. Our team is unique in the Bay Area in that we are the only team in our county. Other counties have multiple teams, primarily with jurisdictional boundaries. For example, Santa Clara has up to 6 teams. You know, San Jose has one, Milpitas has one, Santa Clara County has one. We're the only one in this county. We can accomplish this geographically challenging task by utilizing the same model that our fire service in San Mateo County successfully uses to provide a collaborative and boundaryless service model. So when we show up, we use the resources from all of our different jurisdictions. When a hazmat response is needed, we use local jurisdictions to augment our team and to provide the resource needs necessary to allow us to legally mitigate the emergency. There are a lot of laws that mitigate or that dictate how we do business as a hazardous materials response team, and it involves a lot of labor-intensive issues, and we use those local agencies to help us with that. For a typical response, we respond with 6 members of our team out of Belmont, and we respond with 1 member of OES at a minimum, 1 from environmental health to provide the chemistry for us, and up to 12 members of the local jurisdiction. Local jurisdiction's fire department. Once we are on scene and we've assessed the situation, if safe to do so, we start reducing those numbers as quickly as we can to get them back in service to handle emergencies in their local jurisdictions that might come up while we're there. Due to the nature of most hazmat calls, they tend to be much longer than a typical fire response. Though through staffing changes a few years ago, we've been able to successfully reduce the duration of most hazmat teams. these calls are still considerably long, and they average currently about 3.5 hours per call. That's our average for the last couple of years. So far this calendar year, we've responded to 24 calls for service, which is about a 7.5% increase year to date over the same time frame, and about a 33% increase over the previous year, 2015. Though we've seen a recent increase in illegal drug-related calls, we don't seem to have a specific type of call to attribute this increase. We're just increasing in the call volume. That's all I have for you tonight. I'd be glad to take any questions, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview for those of you that aren't familiar with our team and how we work, and I'd be certainly more than happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Are there any questions for Mr. Thrasher, Ms. Snyder?
This is going to sound really weird, but the Chronicle had an article, and I'd been up at Sacramento about growing marijuana and the pesticides that are associated, pesticides, herbicides. If we're going to have more of that grown both at homes, do you think, or as well as commercial operations, are we going to see an increase in calls related to the hazardous chemicals from growing grass?
I think we very well could see that, as well as a lot more calls related to fire-related activities. We've seen more and more that the legalization of it is helping, because folks are building these grow houses and facilities to code because they're now legal. But there are still many of them that are not legal. It's the illegal ones that really get us.
Where our city is going to be working on our own local ordinance or moratorium, is there anything that you and your staff would recommend that we should also consider? And if not now, then at the next meeting, so that we can start incorporating that?
To incorporate into what?
What we should be looking at in an ordinance, what we should be careful of. I know that Emeryville is very concerned about pesticides and herbicides. They want to grow it commercially. They consider it a biotech drug, but they're concerned about private use of really nasty chemicals.
Yeah, and there are some nasty ones out there. As far as the code and how that might look, I would have to direct you to environmental health, to the county office, Wayman Wong and his crew. They may have more information on that. It would be much more user-friendly than what I could give you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, Ms. Degree.
So you said we had one team. Are you at a point where that's feeling that maybe we should be considering another team, or sounds like everything's going fine?
No, ma'am. Like I said, it's a low frequency, very high risk type of call. So we've had 24 year to date, and no, at this point, no. There have been, I think, 2 times in the last 10 years where we've needed another team, where we were on a call doing a hazardous materials call, and we needed another one, and we have an agreement with the Santa Clara County hazmat team, and they come back us up, and they were able to come in and mitigate the problem while we were busy doing something else. So no, I think we're fine with what we have.
Yes, Ms. Pappen.
I just want to say, I had the opportunity to observe what you do when we had that exercise at the County Event Center. It is very technical and very intensive, and we watched, after the contamination, we watched how you decontaminate, going through the 3 pools and all that stuff. So it is very impressive. I just want to give you a kudos.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And through the chair, if you would like, perhaps the next meeting, I can provide maybe a PowerPoint to give a better illustration of some of the things we do.
That's a great idea. Are there any more? Mr. Sylvester.
Yes, sir. On your team, do we have a collaboration with law enforcement?
We do. We have quite a bit of a collaboration with law enforcement. Of course, we work through OES and the Sheriff's Office. We work hand in hand with many agencies. The Sheriff's Office and the county, we have a terrorism counter-assault team, which use some of the same types of equipment that we tend to use. So we do some training with them. We will bring them in to assist us and offset us. We had a call the other day that involved a possible bomb threat, possible drug lab, possible this and that. So we had a huge collaboration of several of us in there working that call out.
Okay, the reason why I asked, because you made mention about being the only team, I maybe feel that maybe if officers or sheriff deputies can be trained and they just come to work as their normal shift, but if there's a call out, okay, hazmat trained, I have to go to that. And the partner can just drop them off and you do what you have to do, but the other officers just keep working. So, the training aspect, because I know if you train together, you play together very well. So I think that was very important. Thank you so much.
Ms. Hurt.
Yeah, just one comment. If you could take our gratitude and thanks for all the work that you're doing. It's a huge risk back to your team, and we're very thankful that you're taking care of the county in the way that you are.
I certainly will. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Any more questions, Mr. Thrasher? Seeing none, we're going to move on to item 4, response to events, William Fogarty. But I do want to take the time to recognize Assistant Sheriff Jeff Kiernan. It's great to see you back there. Congratulations. I think you have a little familiarity with OES. So it's good to see you, and congratulations on your promotion. So, Mr. Fogarty.
Thank you very much. Well, it seems like since the moment I started working in Office of Emergency Services, not only have I tried to learn every acronym and been force-fed a lot of them, but it seems like we're constantly looking at different disasters, whether or not here or at other locations. Obviously, the events around the world are of great concern to me, living in this community, as well as my family and friends also live here in the community besides working here. So what we've tried to do is prepare for you just very briefly what OES's response is, and just a short synopsis of how we get to the point of what we do. With me are 3 binders, which I'll talk about in just a second, which is a small collection from a very large bookcase through which we have plans of just about everything and anything you can think of. So the response to events, what we do in Office of Emergency Services is we take an all hazards approach. And what that really means is that we're not looking at just identifying one specific incident and saying, well, this is only going to be a fire, so therefore we only need to put water on it. What we look at is this is a fire. This fire could grow in an even bigger issue. We need to start thinking about all the logical pieces of the puzzle that go into this. Are there issues with making sure we have enough water, enough electricity, enough power, whatever it may be that we need to be able to be prepared for, shelter operations. So what we're trying to do is also sort of think 5 to 10 steps ahead. For here, one of the things we want to take into consideration, and I know that Councilmember Schneider and I had already talked about this before, is climate change, which we're going to talk about in one of the slides I have. So we also try to take that in consideration, how that may end up impacting us. Some of you may have heard that some of the ferocity of the hurricanes was caused from the environmental concerns or climate change, and so that you've seen it bigger than ever before. And so those are hazards that we need to be aware of, we need to start preparing for. In addition to that, we have gathering information. So this is part of what we do to plan. And you can see here that, again, this is just a small collection, but I also want to point out we have the local emergency plans for the city of Colma, so that we go ahead and have every different city's emergency operations plan ready to go, so we know what their plans are. In addition to that, we then have a collection of annexes. An annex can be something that's hazard specific. So as an example, I know Councilmember Schneider, you brought up heat related and what we would do in case of heat. There actually is an annex that's basically a playbook, if you will, of everything and anything we do. Where it starts at, what we do as we go step by step for it. And then finally, obviously we are in the middle of earthquake country, and we partner with the California Office of Emergency Services, so that way we're as well prepared as we can be. Obviously, what we think about is we try and think about as many different things as possible, including sheltering, and what that's going to look like for members of our community. Obviously, housing is always a concern to anyone who lives in San Mateo County, and where we're going to put those people up in case they're removed from their houses. And then we communicate information using SMC alert, and we provide training. So really briefly, you have our website. I know that some people have been to our website. On that website, it lists the all hazards and the hazards that we think are particularly relevant. I know someone here was concerned about what might end up happening with North Korea and how we could better be prepared for that. Collaborating with Hawaii, collaborating with the California Office of Emergency Services, we could put together an actual pamphlet that's listed on our website. That information was pushed out through social media and still stays on our website today. In addition to that, we have actual response resources that are listed there. That's part of our job, is to provide equipment to towns and cities and public safety agencies so we can assist them in responding to any sort of critical incident. As you can see, tents, we have mobile command posts, we have things that we can help with almost any emergency. Finally, I want to show you what recently we had a request for a map of different sheltering locations and also how that might be impacted by climate change. So as you see there, that's a potential for a 100-year flood via FEMA. What we do is we work with our partners in the HSA and health to figure out where those sheltering locations might be. And the other thing is, I think it's really important to highlight that sheltering operations using classes from American Red Cross, I know that Mr. Hawley will be talking about, to learn how we operate shelter locations. We're going to go out and we're going to do a site survey and inspection for those. And then we're going to make sure we have qualified, certified staff to be ready to go to open it up. And make sure we have food and water. Finally, I want to just highlight what we do is we also talk to other members in emergency services. We talk to our San Jose compatriots to find out what happened at Coyote Creek so we can learn from issues that ended up occurring there. Because part of our job in OES is not just learning from the mistakes that we have happen or issues that we may have happen or issues that people are thinking may end up happening, but also to collaborate with our other partners within local areas so that we can be better prepared. Because as was said before, it's not just something that happens in one city, it happens to our entire community. And that's the reason why we're trying to work together. Any questions for me?
I love maps, so thank you for the map of shelters. From my Red Cross disaster days, it's the locations of the trailers, which we found in Santa Clara County when I worked down there. They were all in 100-year floodplains, which are now, of course, much more than 100-year floods. Do we know, and if I keep looking for the Red Cross person, maybe it's someone I don't, okay, that's why I don't see you, to know where the trailers are. In Millbrae, we just had to move our Millbrae Lions trailer, which is a food service trailer, and it is now in our flood zone. So I'd be interested in seeing where all of the emergency equipment is too, not just shelters.
Well, I think what's important is that we need to work with the emergency managers for those local jurisdictions so that they can provide you with that information.
Ms. Pappen?
Those are great binders. Are they is the information there online so that the local jurisdictions are tapping into, I know they provide you some of their plans, but then they have access to what the county has?
Absolutely. We believe in a collaborative partnership. We always give whatever things we have available to them as well.
Okay, great. Super.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you so much, Mr. Fogarty. That leads us to one of our final items. That's the American Red Cross update. It's Mr. Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I'm Jim Hawley. I'm substituting for Goff and I, and I'm a volunteer with the Red Cross, as most of the folks with the Red Cross are. So what I want to do is bring you up to date in terms of local disasters since you last met. And we've had 8 that we responded to, and that involved 32 clients, and 3 children were included in that group. And all home fires. We had 1 at Belmont, we had 2 in Millbrae, 2 in Pacifica, 2 in Redwood City, and 1 in San Mateo. I also wanted to give you some information on what the Red Cross is doing in response to Harvey, Irma, and whoever else we have coming. So looking back to the beginning of the events, just numbers from the 11th of September, we had 791 shelters open through that area, and we were providing sheltering for 222,230 people, a lot of folks. And so the breakdown basically is we had 650 shelters in Florida with 871 residents, and 33 shelters in Texas, and we also had shelters in Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And additionally, we have shelters now in Northern California for the fires and in Oregon as well. So in terms of local participation for the folks in Santa Clara County, we've got 208 of our volunteers that are, well, it's from the region, not just San Mateo County, but from our region, out to Harvey and Irma shelters, and we also have folks up north. We also we have one, what we call emergency response vehicle. It sort of looks like an ambulance, and we carry disaster-related supplies in there. We had to donate that to Irma and Harvey, so that's been driven back to Florida. We're now tooling around in a Ford Explorer. But I also wanted to tell you, not sure the time I have, but I wanted to tell you about our fire alarm project that's going on. And I don't know if folks are aware of it, but we have a national program that's very active in San Mateo County of placing fire alarms in homes. And what we do is we make an agreement with a jurisdiction and identify a neighborhood or neighborhoods, get out the publicity, people sign up, and then we go in with Red Cross volunteers, often CERT members, often the fire department participates, and then we have folks such as Suu Kyi, who you may have heard of, and other volunteer organizations, and we go in and install fire alarms. And we began in July, our new fiscal year, with the coast side, and we put in 400 alarms, which is really surprising, on the coast side. All of those alarms went into mobile homes. And we've got, in San Mateo, we're doing what we call hot shots, and that's not just a neighborhood. It's identified homes that, yes, we'd like to have you come. So we send out teams of 3 people that install fire alarms in those homes. But we have projects set up for Belmont on the 14th of October and Foster City on the 28th. We're going to Pescadero, which I think is a really interesting project. We're going out to ranches, and we're going into dormitories and bunkhouses, and figuring out how to put alarms in there, how to educate folks, and looking for cooperation from farmers. So that's going to be a very interesting project for us, and a very needed installation. So the other thing I'd like to mention to you, and by the way, on the 21st actually it's all November 3rd, we're going into Redwood City, the Fair Oaks section of Redwood City. Now, one thing, this kind of broke yesterday in a way. I got several phone calls from community service agencies, and what they wanted to know is, what is Red Cross doing, American Red Cross doing for Mexico? And, you know, basically the American Red Cross and the International Red Cross is providing funds and sheltering and that sort of thing, not the American Red Cross. But there are some numbers that the American Red Cross is using for people here that have family in Mexico. And there's roughly 3 states. There's Mexico with a District Federal, DF, which is the city of Mexico. There's the state of Mexico. There's Morelos, and there is, what's my last one? Let's see, Prueba? Anyway, I've blown it. But anyway, I have that information with me. Now, if you'd like to pass this out, an alternative is that I could email this to you if somebody stopped by later. Would
Great.
passing this out be appropriate?
Yeah, it'd be
To the
more
clerk,
than
possibly?
appropriate.
So that's about it. Are there any questions folks might have?
Do you have any questions for Mr. Hawley?
Good.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Hawley, okay?
Yes, sir.
That moves us on to public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none. That moves us to announcements. Lieutenant Fogarty, do we have any announcements?
No, we do not.
Any announcements from the board? Okay, I want to advise us that our next meeting, I know you're going to miss it, it's January 11th, 2018. And with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
18th.
I have on this agenda, it says January 11th, 2018.
Through the chair.
Oh, you're right. That is, excuse me, I apologize. You're right. That is, thank you for the correction. That's the admin committee meeting. So the future emergency service council meeting is the admin community meeting on January 11th, 2018. And then our meeting is Thursday, January 18th, 2018. I got it. So with that, can I get another, there is a motion to adjourn, right?
So moved to see you in January 18th of 2018, right here at 5:30.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.